Welcome. I'm Karen Moreno, the fund administrator at Mathers Associates. And thank you all for joining us here today for the fifth in a series of conversations with our investing partners. I'd like to take care of a couple of pieces of housekeeping before we get started. First, we invite everyone with any questions they may have to participate. Just use the link at the bottom of your Zoom screen where it says Q&A. Feel free to submit any questions there, and if time permits, we'll do our best to address them at the end of our conversation or email you directly after the webinar. Second, we anticipate this conversation to run between 30 and 60 minutes. With that, I'd like to introduce Elliot Zeelander, Managing Partner of Mathers Associates. We hope you enjoy our presentation. Elliot, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks so much, Karen. On behalf of Karen, Jack, Andrew, the whole team at Mathers, and our limited partners, I'd like to introduce to all of you our friend and guest today, Tracy Marshbanks. He is a managing director at First Analysis. As a housekeeping note, Joe Munda is unable to join us today, but he's looking forward to doing his own hour when it works. Events came up that made it impossible for him to join us. As a bit of background, Tracy has been with First Analysis since 1999. He has a doctorate in chemical engineering from Purdue University and has been a thought leader in the chemical and medical technology industries for well over 30 years. He's authored many research papers, and he works with entrepreneurs as an investor and advisor in those fields. Just for those of you who maybe haven't joined us before, as a First Analysis is a private equity venture capital firm that we've been working with for nearly 30 years. The relationship started between my father, Norbert, and the founder and chairman of First Analysis, Oliver Nicklin. Hello, Oliver, if you're out there. And the relationship continues to grow. Today, we are co-invested with First Analysis in 17 or 18 different portfolio companies. So without any further ado, let me begin our conversation with Tracy. And Tracy will be joining us. There he is, unmuted. Wonderful. How are you doing today, Tracy?
Doing great. We're finally getting some Chicago weather here, so I'm feeling good.
That's wonderful. What should I know? What should the audience know about First Analysis and the sectors or the areas you guys are investing in?
Yeah. So, generally speaking, there are three broad sectors: information technology, various outsourced business services sector, and then the healthcare sector, both services as well as products, product-oriented technologies. And we invest, more in sort of the best athlete. There is no predefined split between sectors or the like. We have teams that we can assemble assemble as needed to bring in the various talents, because a lot of businesses these days are not sort of one thing. They're a combination of multiple technologies and markets. And so we can sort of in a very dynamic way form the best available teams to analyze the investments. Now, particularly the other thing, to know about us, which people, that have met us before do know, we invest in really early stage growth equity. So we are not, we look for companies that do have revenue in the healthcare area. We look for companies and we'll maybe have to explain this a little bit later. Companies that have approval, revenue, and are looking for capital to expand and grow their business. We feel that gives us the best leverage, rather than being too early or too late.
Yeah.
We're kind of in the inefficient territory within private equity.
Yeah, and that is, inefficiency is why we're here and where we're able to invest well, invest for the long term, prudently, conservatively, but with those two, prudent and conservatively, also have tremendous upside. And
Yeah, and just commenting on our partnership, your limited should really know that is, from my view of Mather's perspective, one of the great advantages, because we do, vet and have experts and standing typical venture funds that we will make investments in. But during the course of that investment, there are typically, very high leverage points when a few more dollars make a big difference. And sort of having, if you will, a standing evergreen fund that can respond, I think gives you guys tremendous advantage to team up with us.
yeah,
And it benefits us because we have a trusted partner that can come in when and as needed, if it makes sense for you guys. So
yeah, and
great combo.
I'm not sure if everyone picked up on that, but I mean specifically, while we're an LP in your fund, we have a different relationship with you guys than just about every other LP. And to be there for you guys, it's a very symbiotic relationship, where folks ask me and us all the time, how are you sourcing your deals? And we point to you, we point to the research that you do, the firms that reach out to you, so you're not bidding on companies when you're investing on them. They're coming to you wanting your expertise. And then sometimes right up front and oftentimes down the road, it gets to a point where you need more money for the company and you're able to invite us in. We're friendly investors, and it's really worked out well for both companies.
Yes, I agree. And I think, just to put what you're invested in 5 of the portfolio companies that Joe and I work on. And
Yes.
So that's a pretty high percentage of the companies we manage. So
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
we appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, and right back at you. That's what I said. It's very symbiotic. We all do well, and that's how it should be. Quick pivot. I know my friend Larry asked me this, and I know there's not enough time in the day, nor do we really want to get too deep in it. But how does with the elections from last week and Trump coming in over the next few months, how does that affect the companies that we're invested in?
So, I'll specifically speak to healthcare,
Sure.
and the companies I, and Mathers and Joe and I are invested in.
Yeah.
So those are various flavors of companies in the drug development, diagnostics, therapy space. And I would just say one of the least volatile areas in terms of this political regime matter. It's very non-volatile. We have huge underlying tailwinds like aging population, older more global diseases, pandemics, and so healthcare research and healthcare spending has been pretty much, an up and to the right type phenomena.
Yeah.
Now, where might it matter? There may be, specific areas of health insurance that somebody's, they're going to fight over, or certain policies, but all these things about tariffs and ending wars and all that, that really doesn't impact our markets. And to
Yeah.
the positive, I think it is, to the degree you can actually push and advocate for government agency efficiency. That's the big benefit to most of the companies we deal with, because we're generally under the guidance or regulation of the FDA, or the approval process of the FDA. So the better the FDA and the faster the FDA can review things, the better it is in general for our companies at all stages of development.
Yeah.
So
Just because I know you and I, we could talk here for 3 hours and have a lovely conversation, but for just sort of pivot maybe to one of the 3 companies that were co-invested with you in, CSA Medical. And, you talked about the aging population. Sometimes it's called the silver tsunami, a lot of different things. RejuvenAir, which is the CSA Medical product, is a metered cryo spray that's used in the treatment of folks who suffer from COPD and chronic bronchitis. You folks invested in the company originally in 2011 as a limited partner in that earlier fund. We've got a small investment, maybe $100+ thousand invested in it. Fast forward to the pandemic that you mentioned, and all of a sudden, a respiratory treatment ran up against a respiratory disease pandemic, and the trials had to be essentially mothballed because nobody wanted to go to hospitals for trials. And you guys, First Analysis, came to Mathers, and over the last 4 years, we've invested about $2 million into CSA Medical. Gotten to know Wendy Manners, the CEO, and I'd love you to go on a little bit about the company. There's very exciting stuff going on.
Happy to. And there's some big news. There's been big news and changes at CSA, so
Yes.
I think it's a very appropriate time to talk about them. I just wanted to go back a little bit on First Analysis, particularly in healthcare.
Sure.
I think one of the things we bring to the table, and both Joe and I, when something doesn't smell right, we know it, and we stay away from it, and we put our efforts on things that we know nature allows to happen physically.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably one of our strengths, because we have seen companies that day one we thought were not not ever going to really work, no matter what the story was, and there have been billions of dollars in some of those companies that was lost. So I think that is our key thing, and quite honestly, I think that's relevant to CSA. Just for your sort of running through the history, originally CSA had a product where you would use liquid nitrogen and spray it on lesions in the esophagus to destroy cancer or precancerous tissue. Much like if people have ever gone to the dermatologist and had a blemish frozen off, their face or someplace else. Why is that? Because freezing is a very biologically gentle and helpful process. It doesn't destroy things. It kills cells, but it doesn't destroy structure. You don't get scarring. And so we believed in that fundamental story. The use of liquid nitrogen in a lung is a little bit problematic, but that promise was there in the early days. We didn't know for sure, but it made sense. And over time, it has we've developed the technology, and it has transitioned to the real value creation. Being able to treat chronic bronchitis is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity with no other medical device being able to treat it, and quite honestly, no drugs that really treat the fundamental cause. So it's a multi-billion-dollar market with a new device that we're hoping to get approved. So we sold the original business that was funneled back into the lung business, and
The cash.
from that sale. The other thing to note, as you mentioned on the pandemic, so we didn't stop the clinical trial, but the rate at which we thought we would enroll patients dropped dramatically because you can't really stop a clinical trial and then restart. So it was going slower, and the whole cost of drug or medical device development is really based on the time and the number of patients in a trial. So that cost more money and took longer, which actually created a very advantageous opportunity for Mathers and your team. You were able to come in on a convertible debt instrument that was set up to convert with a lot of financial carrots when there was a large round. And if people haven't noticed, we just did a large financing. 25 million of new capital came in from primarily two investors, and about the same amount, around 25 million of the convertible debt converted at discounts with interest and with warrants. And so Elliot, maybe you can explain the financial implication on your books, but you came in at the right time, are sitting at the top of the equity stack now, and have probably a lower cost base. Well, you definitely have a lower cost basis than the most recent investors.
Yeah, we're in at about a 15% discount to the new investors. Plus, our dollars after accrued interest increased about 25%. Net, our $2 million is sitting at about $3.25 million. So we had a nice 50+% gain when the deal closed last quarter, and we wrote about it. I think that was the first thing we wrote about it. It's a big deal, and what's amazing about this company to me is that there is no treatment, there is no cure, if you will, out there for chronic bronchitis and COPD. And this is a phase 3 trial, so phase 1 and phase 2 have gone successfully. Because this is with the FDA listed as a breakthrough device, because there aren't current treatments for it, that allows for the company, and Tracy is, I hadn't mentioned, but on the board. Every company we're invested in, our partners at First Analysis are on the board. And and as Tracy, you mentioned earlier about sussing out the charlatans out there, because I am not a PhD in chemical engineering, nor claim to be. And you guys really do a great job with that. So at this point, all the trials are in their last. Everybody is on the trial. Everybody, and we're waiting. And by fall next year of 2025, we'll have all of the results.
Right.
Where does that leave the company?
Yeah. And so the way the trial runs, we needed, I think it was 210 patients enrolled. All the patients are enrolled. Currently, all the patients have been treated. And for the FDA submission, you need 1 year follow-up data where you measure various aspects of the response. So that's why it's approximately 1 year from right about now, a little earlier, a little before now, but right about now, 1 year forward, we will have all the follow-up data. We will be doing the analysis and submitting to the FDA at about a year from now. Since it is a breakthrough device, the committed review time at the FDA is 6 months. So we should be, understanding and getting a response from the FDA. I guess that would put us about mid 2026.
Yeah, and that
Um,
6-month response is greatly accelerated over the typical.
Yeah, typically there's not. I don't even know that there's a committed number, but it could
Yeah.
be, a couple years even, depending on the complexity and the like. I would just say the other thing, we've had a lot of data published that is not part of the clinical trial data. It has all been remarkably insightful on how does cryotherapy work, how long does it last, that type of thing, which is more scientific. That yes, you destroy the bad tissues, and the tissues that regrow are more natural and normal looking and performing, because the surfaces in your lungs basically both secrete mucus and then have cilia and the like that sweep it out if need be. And as you have chronic bronchitis, you produce more mucus and your cilia go away, and you sort of drowned in your own, mucus. And what the treatment does is actually sort of rejuvenate the surface of the lung to be more like natural, nature intended. So the other thing is, in the trial, we were able to get, with the FDA's permission. Normally you can't look at your data early because they don't want you like changing things. They want it, it has to be a clean trial. But we were able to get a review of some of the data, and I really can't comment on that, but I will say it is allowed to use it for fundraising purposes. And we just closed a big round.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
draw your own conclusions.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing we're working on in the interim is really what I would call go-to-market amplifiers to the value of the device. So things like reimbursements and manufacturing strategy and manufacturability of the device. And, there's just a whole plethora of other things that you would like to put into a nice, tidy package, because the strategic acquirers, and I think this will be definitely acquired by a strategic,
Yeah.
a large med tech company. The more you can put a bow on it, the bigger the check you can get, and the more upfront in the check you can get, all of which are appreciated.
Yeah. No, so this is neat, because this is a company that, as the data comes in by next fall, let the bidding begin. And the new buyers who just bought in 15% above us, typically they're looking for 3 to 5 times their investment. And we're already up 50%, so 3 to 5x that. I'll owe you another
And
dinner.
I'm not entirely privy to their analysis, but I will just confirm that's exactly what the investors look at.
Yep.
So I would assume you are dead on how you're looking at it. And you guys have this security. It already has a 2x preference, so
Yeah,
it's
right.
it's a 2x on right off the top.
Yeah, meaning if the company is sold for not enough to pay out all shareholders at the top of the deck, we're even on top. We're above you. You've got some convertible notes, but our whole position is at the top of the stack. We get 2x our number, which would be a little over $6 million on a $2 million investment. Once everyone else gets filled in, we then all equally participate above that. And there's a lot of, it's just really exciting. I was talking to Wendelin recently, and she was talking about some research that's being done on the common cough.
Yes.
So a bigger market. And those are, I think, are the bows and bells and whistles.
Yeah.
That, we're not going to get that answer in a year, but we want to hang that carrot out there for the acquirer to say, holy shit, this could be even bigger than this.
Yeah. Yep. Now, I would say, so there is a thing called chronic cough, which is what Elliot was referring to.
Yes, thank you.
Is
not common.
Millions of people have it, and it's that hypersensitive nerves or whatever sort of in your airway, that tickling feeling. And what liquid nitrogen is really good at is like killing off things that aren't supposed to be there, healing appropriately, and maybe even deadening sensitive nerves or whatever. We haven't even delved into it. The only thing I can tell you is this is anecdotal, that patients who have been treated by doctors, the doctors have reported their cough goes away.
Yeah.
And so they're and not the cough of mucus, just the chronic type cough. And so we don't have the data, we don't know, but there is anecdotal evidence that it can help with cough.
Yeah. One last thing I just thought of, not to belabor CSA and RejuvenAir, but in London, it's commercially available now. Correct?
It is. At Royal Brompton, which is one of our key investigator sites, and it has been for many years. We have an approval in Europe, and he has a device and can actually perform commercial treatments.
Meaning covered by insurance.
Covered by, or covered by your wallet.
Yeah.
If you happen to live there, yes, covered by insurance.
Yeah. Cool. Let's, for the, I could keep talking about these guys.
That's a perfect exit for cryo spray. Cool.
Yeah. Next company we should probably talk about is VIDA Diagnostics. Again, sure. Interestingly, all three companies we're planning to discuss today are have women as CEOs. So we put weight in the women who run these companies, and they're certainly pulling more than their weight. And really, now VIDA, it's a software company. They use artificial intelligence to scan and analyze all the chest. It started with the lungs. It's now gotten into all different parts of the body, but helping the radiologists see what's identifiable by the computers. As I like to remind everybody, nobody gets a chest CAT scan or whatnot and it's not looked at, but computers can help prioritize and really identify issues that are out there. So Susan Wood has done a great job with this company. I just heard remarkable numbers from her yesterday, a $13 million booking. It doesn't really compute with the projections, and that's a good thing. But what can you tell us about VIDA Diagnostics?
So VIDA was also impacted by the pandemic, quite honestly.
Yep.
When we initially invested, we had health systems investing and wanting to use the product to guide their treatment, within a health system.
Yeah.
Providers. I think maybe about the day after we invested or so, the COVID pandemic started, and a lot of people stopped going to the hospitals, and the hospitals stopped spending on anything new, and you couldn't even go in to sell. And what the team did exquisitely well and quickly was reposition the company as a tool, as a software package for managing and analyzing clinical trials related to lung therapies.
Yeah.
So, and the customer for that market is pharmaceutical companies. So, COVID is a respiratory disease that drew interest, as well as just sort of some fundamental things. It's sort of the lung's time to become an organ that hadn't been adequately treated. We have all kinds of stuff for the brain and the heart and everything else, and the lungs were kind of a backwater. That was part of our investment thesis going way back, and it's coming true. And I would say the pandemic actually accelerated the focus since it was a respiratory disease. So basically what VIDA does, if you went in for a chest CT, that's a whole bunch of images and slices of your lungs. And they reassemble and construct what I would call would be a digital picture of your lung. That's not really captured in a CT because lungs have, there's connectivity and airflow, and there's a whole bunch of stuff going on that doesn't really captured in a CT per se as a nice clean image. So they sort of clean up the image and do analytics on it. And the beautiful thing that that the computer and AI can do, there's a couple. One is it can tell a doctor where everything is normal, don't even pay attention to those places. Here's where things look fishy. And so that is a huge help to radiologists, which have been overburdened anyway. The other thing that an image can or a computer can do is if you want to track something across time. So if you're getting a series of treatments, like in a clinical trial or of images, it's really hard for a doctor to go, oh yeah, I remember the last 5 times I've looked at these, over after having looked at thousands and thousands of other images, and I remember exactly how they changed over time and I can track it. It's nearly impossible for a human. Computers are great at that. And so this, it's called longitudinal analysis is a really key aspect of what VIDA does. The AI, and just to be clear, the AI that VIDA does or utilizes is more the traditional analytical, finding the pattern in the haystack that humans are very hard at. It is not, writing your book report for you type AI. It is not that. It is not, the large model AI chat GPT. This is very fundamental analytics.
Yeah, and this has been around. They've been using it for forever. I mean, I know Susan's been at the company for 15 years, and
they were a company before she arrived.
Yeah.
So the key, maybe just a little bit on AI, particularly in this space. The key to AI isn't the algorithm; it's the data you have to train the algorithm. And so the key thing that VIDA utilizes is this huge database they have over decades of annotated images from clinical trials where we both know what was the treatment, what was the outcome. So we have a full data set on these. It's just not the image. It's the image and everything that generated that image or the response in the patient. That is what allows VIDA to do what they do, quite honestly.
Yeah, and we're talking hundreds of thousands, if not by now millions of images. And really helping because I've got my friend Jeff, his wife is a radiologist, and I spoke with her and Susan together. And as Susan pointed out, this is really a tool to be used by radiologists. The results are best when used with the AI and the doctors. It doesn't knock out the doctors, but it prioritizes every image.
Yep. And it quantitates an image. For example, you know, if you were talking to a radiologist and you go, oh, what's that density of the tissue there? Like, I don't know, it's kind of a mid-gray, right? The computer can give you a number for what is the density, which then allows a whole bunch of additional insights. And the other thing that VIDA uses it for, and their pharmaceutical company customers use it for, are digital biomarkers. What do I mean by a digital biomarker? That's a term that's thrown around a lot, right? To some degree, your blood pressure, if you took it, could be a digital biomarker, right? It's a number that you can, did it go up, down, not change? In the lung, the old way of testing lungs is tell you, hey, see how far you can walk in 12 minutes or whatever. It's like a physical test, and we go, oh, your lungs are, or here, blow in this tube and we'll see how much air you blew, right? What VIDA does is go in and from this digital representation calculate, you know, do you have inflammation? How big are the tubes? How big are the walls? How many, we call them mucus plugs, do you have? And then you have a whole new way of measuring lung disease. So that's the other aspect of what they do.
Yeah. And by the way, you mentioned investing literally days before COVID. I just pulled out my snapshots on COVID, March 6th of 2020. So yeah, you know, March 13th was the day when everything started to shut down.
Okay, I exaggerated. I said a day. It was a week.
I didn't mean, I wasn't pointing out. I was pointing out how close you were to the date, not criticizing you in any way. And
I didn't take it as criticism, but
yeah, and we invested in March of 22 and have invested in 22, 23, 3 times in 23 or 2 times in 23. And I know we're sitting here with our checkbook open if VIDA needs any more money. I've let Susan know. But in the interim, we're now talking, Susan and you are working with investment bankers. Where does a company like this end up? And certainly the growth that this company has, I think it's growing over 40% year over year. It's, dare I say, cash flow positive now, break even at least?
it has been the past couple months.
Okay, well, you know, that's a great thing. So who looks for, where does this company end up?
So, I mean, ultimately, I'm certain where it'll end up at this stage. You know, sort of approaching double-digit revenue with even with you know, modest resources, as you said, 40% revenue growth. There are growth equity funds that look for that type of company, and I will tell you, there aren't many that have the moat and barrier, in my opinion, that VIDA does. So, as well as just the financial metrics that you were mentioning, there are big buyout shops that have, it's more like a strategic, but they have platforms that this would be probably a very good addition to. And then finally, we have the strategic bucket where, you know, it could be all the way from, you know, a CRO or similar type company that wants to offer more and higher value services to pharma.
Yeah, and it's CRO is a contract
research organization. They do research paid by pharmaceutical companies to develop drugs. And then there are IT companies, you know, cloud companies, the Googles and Microsofts of the world that see this as a very Oracle, very lucrative business line.
SAP, yeah.
And then finally, pharmaceutical companies that if you have the best tool to help you develop new drugs and you could keep that from all your competitors, that can be extremely valuable.
Yeah.
And so quite honestly, we are in a process. we have not sort of predefined who or what it will be. We are in discussions with all those type of parties, and we're going to see what what we view as the most appropriate offer comes in from the market.
Yeah. And this is interesting because we've been invested in it 2.5 years, and we're still basically holding it at the valuation, at the same value we got in 22.
Right.
So, the markets have moved a lot since October of 22, and that sometimes causes agita for me when I see these markets running ahead of us. I don't want to say away from us, but ahead of us. But sort of regardless where markets go, this company has grown from 4 million in revenue to 5 million to 8 million to 12 million, and it's as I heard yesterday, going towards possibly the mid-20s. The multiple, the value of the company, because we haven't seen an outside buyer come in, hasn't changed to us. But
Well, yeah, and just a little bit, this will, explain a little bit of the dynamic of what goes on.
yeah,
We invested, as you said, a little bit before you did. We did not have a full investment at that time, and we were looking to invest more. And so we did go out and test markets and the like, but we did an inside round, and there's no economic reason for us to pay a higher price than we had to,
yeah,
right? Because you don't make money on that round, you make money on the final round.
yeah,
And so part of that has been that dynamic. Part of it was we did need to retool and invest some more money to build the pharmaceutical product, which we now see the benefit of. And part of it was we did want to go out and look to raise money, but we were, a year ago, which was like an absolutely terrible time, and before our numbers had really started kicking in and the gross margin had really started expanding. And so we put in a little bit more and said, hit your metrics, and then we'll go out, and that's what we're doing. And the other thing, on this revenue multiple, when we originally invested, it was more of a service business with relatively low gross margins. It is, and it wasn't recurring revenue per se. It was like contracted. We now have much more software margins and much more recurring nature to our revenue. So I would say the quality of the revenue, not only has it gone from 3 million on its way to double digits for sure right now, the quality of that revenue has also increased dramatically. So I wouldn't argue with your point that it's probably worth a lot more than where we are.
yeah.
Let's knock on wood there.
And no, absolutely. It's a private company. These companies don't move up and down with the markets.
No.
They stay, the valuations stay fast asleep. And that's just fine. These are, tax efficient long-term investments. And and for those who wait, come a lot of spoils. So it's exciting.
On that front too, me personally and First Analysis made a lot of hay because a lot of the companies we invest in are 1202B, the small business tax treatment.
Yeah.
I think the ones we're talking about are in that camp. So it could be very tax efficient.
Yeah. And the 1202B is an IRS rule that allows for the exclusion of federal income taxes due on up to 10x your return. Asterisk, see your accountant, and we're a tax pass through and all those, that's why we have accountants and auditors. But that's also why you brought in Michael Bartell to help with that stuff.
Exactly.
And those are gains that aren't shown in the First Analysis published numbers or Mathers, because those are the taxable numbers that
Yes.
affect people that we don't get credit for, and that's all right. We know it, and hopefully our investors know it.
Look, we focus on gross returns.
Yeah.
But we understand the after-tax return is really what matters to our investors. And so it's very beneficial.
Yeah. And we focus on the net.
Right.
You know, how much has my account grown or not? We probably should move on to our final company, Applied StemCell. Another super unique opportunity for Mathers. All of these, I think, are super unique opportunities, but also for First Analysis.
Yes.
In that this is a cell and gene therapy company, sort of the picks and shovels for the biotechnology world. They're a CDRO, and so they develop and do research, you know, for the biotechnology companies. Ruby Sai is the really one of the founders of the company, and in September, October of 23, QHP came in and did a buyout where Ruby and management still own a lot of stock, but she also was able to put away a princely sum, and they spent a little more than they like to spend. They turn around and came to you guys to see if you would invest, and you guys turned around and said, hey, it's a little, what they couldn't invest in is a little more than we need, and you guys came to us. Right. And so between you guys putting money actually into the balance sheet and then us co-investing into this company, along with a very big LP of QHPs who bought a position as well, we're now all invested in this. And our investment only went in the last month or so, so I'm not going to pretend to know much about this company. Tell us about the, you know, induced pluripotent stem cells, and you know, and how this company helps other biotechnology companies. Maybe if you can give an example of, you know, what we laymen would, how it affects us. I know one of the great things is they use adult stem cells, so there's no controversy there, and they're able, the holy grail is to create drugs that can, stem cells don't need to come out of the patient, be cleaned and put back. These are actually stem cells that can be created, and there'll be a different line of them for different folks, but where one remedy can treat multiple people, which is the holy grail.
Yeah. So, and let me start off by saying we have been looking to make an investments in CDMOs for decades. I used to follow CDMOs as public companies. So these are the companies that supply either the capacity or the technology or the testing for pharmaceutical companies. They're a form of CRO. They don't do the clinical research. They do sort of the preclinical development, and so CDMO is clinical development and manufacturing organization. So they develop drugs and they may manufacture the drugs. What that means is you get a much longer tail than a CRO, because it's not just during the trial. If it goes commercial, you're making it and getting paid for as long as that drug is commercial. So they have very long tails on these businesses, very nice businesses, high margin, long life. Cell and gene therapy is, quite honestly, the latest and greatest biotech. There are waves of technology in biotech, And there are very few cell and gene therapies on the market because they're all in development, which is exactly where CDMOs like ASC, Applied Stem Cell, focus. That's a good thing. And what Ruby developed and has within Applied Stem Cell are two really, maybe two of the most important breakthroughs in technology, in healthcare, in science even. Now, so the breakthroughs, we have our own versions of those. So we don't owe anybody. We didn't get the Nobel Prizes, but once a Nobel Prize and people prove it's possible, others figure out other ways of doing it. And so let me go through those. Pluripotent stem cells. So stem cells are the progenitor cells that can become anything. They can become any cell, any tissue, any organ in the body. So if you think about it, we kind of all start out as stem cells and differentiate into humans and organs and specific tissues. When stem cells were originally found, we found them within the human body. You sort of filter out your blood and you can find stem cells. Those stem cells can only become sort of predetermined things. There are types of stem cells. Or you could go to later infants. The younger you are, the more you have what we call pluripotent cells. What that means is your stem cells can become anything, any type of tissue. But that is where the fetal tissue and stem cell issue came. A Japanese gentleman figured out that, you know what, we could take skin cells from an adult, and he figured out a way how to transform those into pluripotent stem cells. So now we were able to go from adult, typical, normal, differentiated cells to pluripotent stem cells. And then now you can take that to any tissue, which can be a therapy.
Yeah. And that hits home for me. Both my mom and my sister have been dealing for 12 and over 4 years with multiple myeloma. They had their stem cell, they were radiated and whatnot, and it was hard, and they had their stem cells taken out and cleaned up by a bunch of little people. They must be really little. And then put back in. And this now you literally can take skin cell from any person anywhere, and with the gene editing tools that Applied Stem Cell has, I think Select and Target, which people don't know those names, but they do know the name CRISPR. And, where does this go?
Yeah. So, just a little bit more on how gene editing comes in.
Sure.
So if you have a pluripotent stem cell, induced pluripotent stem cell, because you do it sort of chemically in the lab, that doesn't mean that you can control the properties of the cell it becomes. And it doesn't mean, you've all heard about tissue matching and tissue typing and donations and everything. That's because if you take one human cells or organs and put them in another human, that looks like cancer to some degree. It looks like foreign tissue, and the body will attack it and destroy it, right? So you have to overcome this immune system resistance of, and in fact, that's what they probably did to your sister and your mother. You're gonna do a transplant, so you go in and knock out the immune system so that it won't kill the stuff that you're giving them, like if it's from somebody else, like a blood transfusion. That's why you type blood. If you put the wrong type of blood in a human, it basically you die, right? Because it doesn't match.
Yeah.
So what the gene editing lets you do is basically turn off the immune identity of the cells. So they look like they call it, immuno advantage. Nobody's allergic to them. So I could take a sample from one person, create a bunch of cells, and give them to anybody because there will be an immune response. The other thing I can do is I can build in features. If you're missing the gene for a certain protein that you need to be healthy, you can create cells that produce that that protein for a person. And then again, that is the gene editing. Gene editing, CRISPR, which you referred to, got a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
The iPSCs, the pluripotent stem cells, got a Nobel Prize, and they got them in record time, like within a few years, I think. I mean, most in the old days, Nobel Prizes were usually in chemistry and medicine were usually given after the death of the inventor because it took so long to award them. These were in record time because they're just dramatic breakthroughs.
Yeah.
And we have that type of technology in ASC.
Yeah.
They are a commercial organization. QHP is revamping the business structure, the go-to-market strategy. There's a lot of work going on at the moment. So we're not on the, if you will, ramp phase. The other thing is there have been some pullback in the capital markets which fund, to a larger degree than most other markets, fund biotech, right? These small biotech companies go public because they need a lot of money. And if the public markets are closed, they don't do their clinical trials and they don't do as much research, which is sort of a bit of a negative for ASC. But the long term, this is the way the new breakthroughs in medicine will be done, through gene editing and stem cells. And without QHPs, stepping in and writing a really big check and then, laying off some of it to us,
Yep.
We would have never been able to, even touch this type of company.
Yeah.
Given the capital required.
Let me ask. We're down to the last few minutes, unfortunately.
Sure.
Maybe I should time our phone calls.
Although I heard it was 1 hour to 1 hour and a half, didn't I?
I don't know if the powers that be.
I know. I'm kidding.
Unfortunately, I'm just doing what my bosses tell me to do.
Exactly.
Any final thought you want to share with our limited partners?
Yeah, I mean, the other thought I would share is there are 2 other investments that we jointly hold that
Yes.
we haven't talked about.
Yes.
I would say so that is Checkpoint Surgical and UNU.
Yeah.
I think maybe they should be the topic of some future conversation.
Absolutely.
But things are looking very good for both of those companies.
Yeah.
So sort of those 5 out of 5 things are progressing very nicely.
Yeah.
At all of them. And I would just say both to your team and your limited partners which support you, for what we do in healthcare, it makes a really powerful combination of us being able to go in and understand what's going to work and what the trends are, and then have a remarkable partner with a different structure, fund structure and the like, that can come in at very opportune times.
Yeah.
To help us both.
Yeah.
So
well,
many thanks to you, the team, and your limited partners from First Analysis.
And we're grateful, humbled, blown away by what you guys know and do. And Tracy, I just want to say thank you for joining us today. Sorry Joe couldn't be here, but I look forward to Joe being on here. You guys are awesome.
And if there, I would just make the offer to you and your limiteds, if there are questions and the like, which may have accumulated or not accumulated, but if people have questions, send them over. We can maybe address them and let
Yeah,
you
no,
summarize
that would
back.
be awesome. And I know you've actually helped one of our limiteds who looked to get in on the CSA trials
Yes.
and didn't qualify. But
He
then
was
got
1 year
into the
too old,
trial.
if I recall. So it was like,
Yeah, and I believe Fred's doing great.
oh,
And
good, good.
Phyllis is greatly appreciative of that. Anyway, we should wrap up here.
Okay.
This is our 5th webinar, and to help make them as useful and informative for you folks as we can, it'll be helpful if we can get some feedback. So oh, you didn't need to go away, Tracy.
Okay.
As our
I
presentation
can come
ends,
back.
a very short survey will pop up. So if you don't mind, we would really appreciate your feedback there. And with that, I'll just say thank you and look forward to speaking to all of you soon. Bye-bye.